brief Q&A, so you can unmute at that point. We'd ask you to remain muted throughout the presentation, and then we can do Q&A towards the end. So thanks again, and Robin, we'll turn the time over to you now.
Okay, thank you. Everybody hear me okay? And you can see my screen okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to kind of take a whirlwind trip through learning about our families from the naturalization records. And we have some objectives for today. And this first one is to briefly explore citizenship records worldwide. So every country has its own rules for putting citizens, making their people citizens, or naturalization, whatever we want to call it. And so we're just going to take a brief look at some of those. We're going to talk about the value of naturalization records to family history research. What can you learn? What kind of things are available? We're going to describe the process, what people had to go through or still have to go through. And then we're going to try our hand at finding some records for your immigrant family's naturalization. Now, there's just a note here. We're going to spend most of our time talking about United States naturalization, but like I said before, each country has its own rules, and they can differ widely, they can vary widely, but they all still have their own rules. So, citizenship records throughout the world. Processes to become citizens vary around the world, and they depend on status, politics, culture, economics, and historically, qualifications ranged from just living in the country to proving your worth, to belonging to the correct social class, you know, all kinds of different categories there, but nearly universal is the qualification of being male. So not until the 1920s were females treated separately in the United States anyway, and some places around the world, they still don't have citizenship the same way as you would have if you were male. Okay, here's some examples. Here's Germany. Germany was not unified as a nation until 1871. So most of the citizenship records are by town or county. And only legitimate, not illegitimate, but legitimate middle or upper class males were granted citizenship. So that's not very widely spread, is it? And that allowed them to engage in business. It gave them protection under the law, and it gave them permission to reside in a town without being expelled. And these citizenship records were recorded in Bürgerbuchers, which just means civil records, which may date from medieval times. So the Germans were pretty good record keepers. And if you can get into that, that's a great thing. You know, you can find somebody clear back to medieval times. I think this little note I have at the bottom is quite interesting. Germany was unified in 1871. At that time, the German Empire consisted of 26 states. They included 4 kingdoms, 6 grand duchies, 5 duchies, 7 principalities, 3 free Hanseatic cities, and 1 imperial territory. So that's kind of a mess when it comes to trying to find citizenship records for places in Germany. Just like all of the genealogy in Germany, it's just scattered all over the place. Here's what it is in Australia. Did you know you couldn't become a citizen in Australia until 1949? Because it wasn't Australia then, it was still a British colony. And so you were a subject of the Queen. However, residents born outside the British Empire were foreigners. They couldn't vote, they couldn't own land or be employed as public servants. But a citizen or an alien could be granted naturalization in the beginning just by a special act of the legislature. But then the jurisdictions simplified the process. So each state naturalized its own citizens with its own requirements. And if you look at that example from 1849, New South Wales naturalized persons born outside the British Empire after they lived in New South Wales for at least 5 years and applied for naturalization. So that's a lot like the United States. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So each of the jurisdictions, I guess we can call them states or provinces of Australia, had their own rules. Okay, how about Brazil? Brazil allowed citizenship to native Brazilians and Portuguese. So if you were a native Portuguese, you could come to Brazil and have citizenship in Brazil. Anyone else was required to go through a naturalization process and meet requirements in one of 4 categories. So these records are in the Brazilian archives, and they're not really readily available to researchers, but Family Search has about 4 million immigration cards from Brazil digitized and available online. So they're immigration things, but not to do with naturalization. So many countries' naturalization records are available to the serious researcher. However, they may not all be online, indexed, or even digitized. So how do you find them? Well, start with the basics. You look for hints, you make notes, and there's always emails. Okay, so here we come to where we can find things in the Family History Guide. And this, if you do just a general search when you get to the Family History Guide for naturalization, you'll find links to over 90 different places that deal with citizenship worldwide. So that's a good place to start. And the US naturalization records are located in Project 9 United States, and that's Gold D2. And if you get in there, you can see some of those videos that James Tanner's been making, and I think others have done it too, that are just some basic ways to get started. So if you don't know anything about it, here's a good place to start. Another place to look is, of course, the Family Search Research Wiki. And you can go here and you can type in the topic of naturalization, and it'll help you get through a whole bunch of things. Notice that there are 95,000 articles there. So there's a lot of places that you can look for things, and it's amazing what you can find. Another one of the unsung heroes of the research possibilities is Browse All Published Collections. And when you go to this, it's also in Family Search. You go to this and it will tell you by topics what you can look for. And these are the records that are the collections that are there. And it's surprising. You could type in under collection title, you could type in naturalization and then click on any of those places that are listed under the place spot. And of course, Ancestry has a huge collection as well. I just went to the naturalization, I just typed in naturalization under their search menu, and there are 280 collections that you can look through. So they've got a huge bunch of collections as well. And that's not just United States. They have a section of Australia and New Zealand and the UK, and I'm sure there are other places. Those are the ones that I've just looked at. Okay, so what value are these naturalization records going to be? Well, let's talk for just a quick minute before we get into that about the history of naturalization in the United States. In the colonial days, if you came to the United States it wasn't the United States then, to North America as a colonist, you were probably British. That's where most of the people came from. Those who came who were not British were just kind of accepted, and there wasn't a whole lot of regulation going on. Technically, anybody who was non-British was considered an alien, and it required an act of parliament to get them to become a citizen. But that that didn't count for people who came and settled in their own colonies. In June of 1776, the Continental Congress resolved that everyone living in the soon-to-be free colonies owed allegiance and were members of their respective colonies. So that became the first citizenship for people other than British citizens. And then between 1790 and 1802, the US enacted various residency and ethnic restrictions on aliens entering the lands. And Congress also introduced paper trails to keep track of the process. You gotta love those paper trails, right? So in the 1802 law set policy, and these are the restrictions, a person had to declare their intent to become a citizen in a court of law at least 3 years before they could become a citizen. They had to live in the US for at least 5 years, at least one in the state where they were filing. They had to take an oath of allegiance to the United States and renounce all other allegiances. They had to demonstrate good moral character and support the Constitution, and they had to file their papers in any court with whatever paperwork that court required. So if you look at that process that they had to go through, let's see what valuable information you can find from them. Of course, it depends on the year your ancestor applied for citizenship, what information was required. And I'm going to show you this chart, and it lists what records are available by the time period in the United States. So if we go to the early records up to 1790, you can find the name and the residence of the immigrant. You can find their county of origin, or country of origin, sorry, can't read my own writing, and the date of the action. And sometimes it will have the name of the town or the village where the person came from. Then from 1790 to 1906, this is when the process was standardized, and the forms produced at least 3 documents, which were filed in court and contained the information above, the name of the person, the residence, country of origin, and the date of the action, plus the port of arrival, the date of immigration, the age of the applicant, letters attesting to their moral character. And as we'll see, I'll show you an example of one. It also gave the place that the person came from. Okay, from 1906 to the present, these are the ones that have a lot of information. So if you were lucky enough to have ancestors immigrate to the United States between 1906 and the present, you'll find lots more information. The forms were filed in duplicate and then later triplicate. They were submitted to both the court and the Federal Immigration Department, and they listed all of the above things. Plus, they give family status and members, the last foreign address, the port, vessel, and date of arrival, and where and when each of the documents was filed. So that's pretty good amount of information. If they came with their family members would be there. If they didn't, then sometimes they had to prove that they had lived in the country for a while, and they would report who their family was. And I'll show you an example of that here in a minute too. So there's some really good things that you can get from naturalization records. Now let's go through this process again. The process for becoming a citizen, after 1790, it was the result of this process, and it could take many years to complete. There were a few shortcuts allowed, but some people were denied citizenship altogether. You just weren't allowed to be a citizen. This is the process that had to be completed in a court of law, and it didn't list which court. Any court of law could be stipulated. Okay, first of all, the applicant files a declaration of intent, and they're sometimes called first papers. And if you go to the census records that list immigration and naturalization on the censuses, I think they're 1900, 1910. PA will be the indication that they had filed their first papers. In a lot of cases, maybe not all, but some, there would be people meeting the immigrants as they came off the boat and asking them to fill out a declaration of intent. So right off the boat, they were asked to complete those papers. The second one is the applicant has to live in the country or the state for the specified amount of time. So 5 years in the country, 1 year in the state, whatever that qualification was. And they also have to meet the other qualification like supporting the Constitution and are of sound moral character. And so there would be letters that would attest to this person's moral character that they would submit with their applications. The applicant then files a petition for naturalization, and these are their second papers, and they usually contain more information. Then the fourth one is the applicant appears in court for the oath of allegiance. So after they've gone through all the process and everything's checked off, then they have to have a court appearance, and they administer the oath of allegiance, and then the applicant receives a certificate of naturalization. And that's when it's listed as NA in the censuses. So if your person filed their papers, sometimes they were confused and said, yes, I'm naturalized. And so the census takers would put NA in that, even though they just had filed their first papers. Now, not everybody completed this whole process. Some only filed their declaration of intent, okay? And then they just went on from there. Some made it through the petition for naturalization, but didn't ever get to court to do their oath of allegiance. And so they didn't ever get their certificate of naturalization. So, you know, it's not like every single person had all of these papers, but a lot of them had some of them. Okay, so what we're looking for then is the declaration of intent, a petition for naturalization, the court appearance for the oath of allegiance, and the certificate of naturalization. Those are the four things that we're looking for. So where can you look? Well, Family Search, of course, has naturalization and citizenship records. The wiki, browse all published collections, you can look in the catalog, etc. Those are all good places to look. Ancestry has a huge index, and that is added. That was added by the Ancestry World Archives Project. So you can find quite a bit of information in those, and I'll show you some examples in just a minute. Of course, Family History Guide, we talked about that, Project 9 Gold D2. Of course, and then the National Archives and Records Administration, we call it NARA, that has it has a guide to their holdings and instructions for requesting the records. A lot of the records have been put in different regional centers, and some of those have been digitized. And so those are some available online. This site, www.naturalizationrecords.com, used to be a separate site by itself, but now it links to Ancestry. And it's specifically for the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So if you have ancestors from there, that's another good place to look. Okay, Fold 3 includes military naturalizations. So if you had, like I did, I had an ancestor who came to the United States, signed up to be in the military, and was granted citizenship almost within a few weeks of them coming. So that can happen. It was quite a shortcut process. Also, you can use the Family Search Wiki or the Ancestry Wiki to find out which courts handled naturalizations during the time frame you're looking at. And I think we all recognize this red book. And this is the American State, County, and Town Sources. And it is online at Family Search Wiki and Ancestry Wiki. And so if the court records aren't among those online, then you can contact the county recorder or library to find a local historical group. I've had some good luck finding helpers through US Gen Web. It's free and it can put you in touch with a local family historian for your county. So those are all places that you can look for records. So what can you expect to find? Let me give you some examples here. So I was looking for my ancestor, Joseph Bode. He came from Germany in 1804. And I had his, the ship manifest that shows he came with his wife and 2 of his children. So I looked for him and I knew he went to Philadelphia. I didn't know if he stayed there. So I looked through Naturalization Records online index from Ancestry. And this is what I found. Notice that it has, under Naturalization Records, it has the Declaration of Intent was filed in the Quarter Sessions Court in 1811. So that's Ancestry that I found that in. But I couldn't find anything more there other than just that index. So then I went to Family Search. And under the catalog, I looked for Court of Quarter Sessions, Philadelphia County. And this is what I found. I found a Declaration of Intents from 1802 to 1932. And so I went to this catalog, this site, and found that there were microfilmed of the originals, and there were 52 films that went with this. So from the 52 films, I found an index. And in this index, it had from October 1810 to September 1820 indexed. And it says it's book number 1. And then it gave the page number. And there's my Joseph Bode. So he was on page 46 of book number 1. So then I went to that film, and this is what I found. Here's this Declaration of Intent in 1811. Notice it gave the name of the applicant and the date. It gave the place and date of birth, which they didn't always have, and his age when he got there. It gave his former allegiance. It said where he immigrated from and where he immigrated to. And then it said the port of arrival and his intention. His intention was to settle in the county of Philadelphia. And then it was recorded that date, and there's his signature on there, which I think is pretty cool. Not many places you can get an 1811 signature. Okay, so what should I look for next? I found his Declaration of Intent. I should try to find a petition for naturalization, or the certificate of naturalization, or even an oath of allegiance or a letter attesting to his moral character. So I can look for those things. I might have to go to Philadelphia records to find those, or I might have to go to where he moved to, which is in other places in Pennsylvania. Of course, I can look in the National Archives. I can look in any courts in the vicinity. And other places I might look are the county court records in the county or state archives or at a regional archives. Or I could go to federal court things, Naturalization Index, Declarations of Intent. I could check out the Immigration Service, BCIS. But that doesn't help me very much because it has pretty extensive records after 1906. But the National Archives holds the ones from before then. Okay. They also have records for people who lost their citizenship for one reason or another, or who had their citizenship restored. There was a law on the books that said that if a woman married an alien, she lost her citizenship. So then when the law got changed, then she had to go back and get her citizenship restored. So kind of a quite an involved process. Okay, so here's a declaration of intention after 1911. And what's different? If you'll notice, it's not handwritten. It's up in the clear upper right-hand corner. It says triplicate, so it's filed in triplicate. Numbers are given for the process, and everything's typed nice and neat. So you've got more information. Here's Lawrence Histon. He's a cocoa roaster. I'd like that job. He's kind of stocky. He's 5'8", 190 pounds. He came from County Limerick in Ireland, but he immigrated from Glasgow, Scotland, which is a pretty interesting story. He got accused of stealing something, and I found a record of it in court. And then he took a runner, left Ireland in a big hurry, was on a boat from Glasgow, Scotland within a week. So he wanted to get out of town quick. Notice that it's typed so you can read it really well, but it still has the applicant's original signature, which I think is way cool. So this is from 1911. Okay, now that was his declaration of intent. So what we want next is an petition for naturalization. And here he is again. This one happens to be handwritten, so it's not quite as legible, but it has the same information on there about him coming to New York from Glasgow, and that he was born in County Limerick, Ireland. And he has, it tells his birth date, and now he resides in New York. And notice down here at the bottom, it says affidavit of witnesses. His buddy is the liquor dealer, and he gave him a glowing letter of recommendation. Notice that it has his family information on here. It has his wife and a child. It has the name of which court he's in, okay? And there's the affidavit of the witnesses. Okay, here's one from 1941, a little bit later. This one, notice you've got a physical description and a photograph, okay? And it also has her street address and the court where the papers are filed. So this is her certificate of naturalization. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so now I want to take you to Family Search, and we're going to look at a couple of, okay, let me get mine. That's okay. We're going to go to Heinrich Terkark. He's no relation, but he was born in the Netherlands, and he came to the United States and wants to be naturalized. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to look at the sources that are attached to him already and see if there's anything in there about naturalization. There's a death index. I don't see any naturalization records. So I'm going to go to 1910 census and take a look and see if it says when he came to the United States. I hope we can read this. It's kind of light. He's the very first one on the list. Can you see him? It says here, 1892 is when he came to the United States. And I can't tell if that says NA or PA. It should say PA, but I think it says NA, which means he says he's naturalized. This is the 1910 census. Okay, so I want to go back. I can get out of here. Okay, and I want to go to, oh my goodness, sorry. Okay, notice that there is a record hint here, but I'm going to skip that and take you through the search this way so you can see how that could work rather if you didn't have a record hint for him. So that just takes the original search with all of the original information that's on his record, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to restrict my records by type. And in this case, I want to go to immigration and naturalization and then update. And notice what comes up. Montana County Naturalizations. Here's his birth date, the same as up here. Here's his naturalization is listed as 1912 in Valley, Montana. And it's got an indexed record, and I can actually see the image. So let's go to the indexed record first. It says that he was naturalized in 1912 in Valley, Montana. And let's see what the record shows. This is one of those examples where you've got both the declaration of intention and the petition for naturalization, both on the same microfilm in the same place, which is really quite wonderful. It says he's white, he's got dark complexion, but he's 5'5", weighs 140 pounds, has black hair and brown eyes, and he came from Holland. And then here it has all of his family. So if you didn't know all of his children, and his wife and children, and where they were born and when they were born, look at this. And it says where they all reside now in Montana. So
Automatically saved to my flash drive, aren't they? I don't have to upload them or anything, they're automatically saved.
It should be. That's where you sent them.
Okay. Okay. So here is all that information, plus there's his signature. He also has affidavits of a petitioner and the witnesses. So he's got a couple of witnesses here attesting to his character, his good character. So that's a pretty cool one from Henrik Terhark. Okay, let's go back and let's go to another we're going to go to Reinhardt Hansen. And Reinhardt came from Norway. Now, Reinhardt has some sources listed here. So we're going to look at that. And it says, let's see if it says what date he was in, if he was naturalized or not. There he is right there. It says PA for him. So it says he came to the United States in 1901 and his first papers have been submitted. So we've got that information for him. Pretty cool, huh? Well, let me get out of, I got my screen sharing thing in the middle there. There, okay. So let's go back to him and see what other sources there are for him. This is Reinhardt again. So do we see anything for naturalization for Reinhardt? Yes, here's one from Colorado. Notice the little world here. So that means it's going to take me to a site out of family tree, out of family search. And in this one happens to go to Ancestry. So I'm going to click on that one and it'll take me there. And notice that it has that his naturalization age was 21. Well, he came to the United States when he was 21. So I'm not thinking he's getting naturalized the same year as he comes to the United States, unless he joined the Army and there wasn't a war going on, so that wasn't part of it. So you got to remember that the indexers aren't always telling the truth, maybe, or getting everything exact. So now here we've got facts for declaration of intent. So sometimes the people would would give them a fax sheet to fill out. So they'd fill this out and then bring it in when they went to do their declaration of intent. So here he is, he's 37 years, not 21. He says he came from Norway and he's at present residence is Denver, Colorado. That he came over on the Campania and he came from Norway, and I can't say that, so I'm not even going to try. And that he married a woman in Fort Collins, Colorado, and that was the date that he arrived. Now that's quite a bit of good information, but here's one of those things that we always want to do, and that's check the pages before and after the ones that show up on the screen. So this one, there's his case number. So that's just the first page. This is just the second page. And we keep going. Here's the facts for the declaration with dates on here, stamped. The next one, there it lists his children and where they were born. So he started out maybe in 1911 in Denver. Then he went to Calgary, Canada. Then he went to Fort Collins, and now he's back in Denver. So that's pretty interesting. That gives you a little idea of where his children were born, tells a little bit about his experience in the United States and Canada. And then, can you see something that might cause a problem? He had one of his children born in Canada. So, okay, here we go. There's the same number on there. Let's see if there's another page. Okay, here is request for certificate of arrival, and it's stamped Montreal. So we get some information from Canada about where he came from and where he went to, and he's asked for that. And then down here, we've got some stamps on there. You've got a chief examiner from Denver, Colorado, stamped it in 1922. See if there's anything else. Oh, something typewritten. Okay, and here's a form that they have to fill out if they entered the United States through Canada or Mexico. So here he is. When he came to the United States, first of all, he was by himself. He went to Clatonia, Nebraska. And he was in the United States until 1912. And then he went to Calgary. And then then he came back to Sweetgrass, Montana. See if there's anything else. Oh, one more page. It's been scribbled through, but here's another list of the facts for naturalization. And a little bit more explanation. Okay. See if we're done yet. Oh, nope, we still got more. There's listed children again. This is all typed, easy to read. And then here's a letter that he sent to the Commissioner of Naturalization, asking for his child to be naturalized. Okay, I ask for such certificate or other papers which will enable me to obtain full citizenship, both on account of myself, my wife, and my children. Okay, anything else? Nope, that's it. It goes on to the next one. So, pretty cool, huh? All kinds of good information that you can find. And that's just a brief example. It gives you some places to look and some things that you can find. Okay, if you have any questions, I'm done. Bob, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here. I think Bob's there someplace.
Other Bob? Bob and Bob?
Let me ask him to unmute himself.
Okay, sorry about that.
There you are.
Yeah, a little bit of a delay. Thank you, Robin. A wonderful presentation. Learned lots of good things, and thanks for the case studies at the end. Those were super as well. Does anyone have questions they would like to direct to Robin?